cabin crew get sick while at work? Well, of course. Considering the chances of getting a cold, a flu, a mosquito bite, food poisoning, and so on are higher when you travel. Think about that. As cabin crew, we travel all the time. It's the biggest part of our job. Being on a plane with thousands of passengers going from point A to point B and being exposed to so many changes every day, weather, people, timing zone. So yes, unfortunately, we sometimes can get sick on board. I have seen some of my colleagues at work being food poisoned during the flight or having strong migraines, injuries on board such as burns, broken arm, allergic reactions, and even severe choking. One of my colleagues on a very long flight had a severe choking case while he was eating his meal. He was eating it so fast that he actually got severe choking. He was fine in the end, but he needed hospital assistance once we were on ground. So it can happen anytime to anyone, especially to a cabin crew in a plane. Because we are humans too, right? But luckily, we are well trained in first aid procedures, and both passengers and crew can be treated on board on most cases. Welcome back to my channel. I am Rosie. I used to work for Qatar Airways and later I worked for Etihad Airways as a cabin crew. And in today's video, I want to share with you a rather unexpected and challenging experience I had while on duty as a flight attendant. As glamorous as the job may seem, there are moments that truly put your resilience to the test. It all started with the crazy rosters. Our schedules are supposed to give us enough time to rest in order to maintain a good health balance. But even though in theory your roster respects the resting times, your body might get very confused and will not always sleep when it should sleep, right? Especially when changing time zones every day. And sometimes this cumulates with a busy flying month, and the result might be very traumatic for the body. And this was exactly the case in my story. At that point, I was still flying for Qatar Airways. I had this long block of flights after flight after flight, like 3 turnarounds, followed by 2 layovers, all quite long shifts, maybe around 8-10 hour duty per day, changing time zones. It was a very hectic roster that month. Just to make it clear, this needs an explanation. You will not always have this type of crazy rosters, but sometimes your monthly schedule can be overwhelming. Anyway, back to the story. I had a hectic few days with high workload, and my last flight before my days off was Doha, Singapore, 24 hours layover in Singapore, then a night flight back to Doha. I was actually quite excited about the flight as it was my very first time in Singapore. The flight from Doha to Singapore was super busy, so it went quick. And when I reached the hotel in Singapore, I was thinking to visit the city, of course. However, fate had other plans for me. I felt exhausted and I decided to sleep straight away. I set some alarms, but I cannot recall hearing them. I slept for the whole layover, and the only meal I had was some plain rice with some steamed vegetables. And I only drank water for the last few days. I tried to gather my powers back for the returning flight, Singapore to Doha, as that is an 8 hours night flight. So I woke up, I had a shower, got my makeup on, got my uniform on, packed my things, and went to the hotel's lobby to meet the rest of the crew. We did a briefing in the bus on our way to the airport. In the briefing, we were told that this is a fully booked flight, so no empty seats, none in economy class, none in business class. To translate this, it means we were expecting a busy flight, as usual. We arrived at the airport in Singapore. If you have never been to that airport, I have to tell you that this is an incredible, beautiful airport. It's huge, it's elegant, it even has this amazing waterfall in it. It's amazing just to walk in. We reached the checking point, you know, where the x ray thingy is, and you have to scan your stuff and, of course, scan yourself. And just there, in the middle of many, many passengers and crew from other companies, I started redecorating the beautiful airport from Singapore with my internal liquid. I suddenly started throwing up around and I was running to find a bathroom. That was such an embarrassing moment. People were looking at me. I was wearing the uniform, and in the same time, I was throwing up, running. It was awful. My cabin crew manager was so supportive. God bless her. I forgot her name, but I remember she is Indian. We flew together only one time, but I remember that she followed me in the airport's toilet. She stayed with me and helped me to clean the mess and to change my jacket. Anyway, I thought that I am fine and I would actually stop vomiting because for the moment I felt alright. Anyway, at that point it was too late to offload me from the flight. We were reaching the gate. I entered the aircraft. I did my tasks, my pre-flight checks, I helped with the boarding. Despite feeling unwell, I knew I had a responsibility to fulfill, so I tried my best. But again, that was not what fate wanted for me. Shortly after takeoff, I ran to the toilet again and I was vomiting everywhere. I couldn't stop again and again and again, maybe 4 or 5 times. There was actually nothing left. The liquid became yellow and then green. Sorry for the details. At this point, all my crew was aware of my situation, but they were all very, very, very busy with their tasks on board. So I was called to the front to stay with my manager at the very front galley. I felt safer and more comfortable being around her, but still, I didn't stop. As the hours dragged on and with no improvement in sight, the decision was made to contact Medlink. Obviously, I was going to in dehydration. So my manager contacted Medlink. This is what we do in case of medical advice. Medlink is a dedicated medical advice and support hotline that connects airplanes with professional medicals on ground. Medlink advised that I take anti-emetic pill and wait for a while. I did take it. I did my best not to throw it out, but maybe 40 minutes later I was vomiting again. I usually hate being in an aircraft's lavatory, but in that flight, that toilet became my best friend as I was on my knees on the floor. Fast forwarding towards the end of the flight, I threw up exactly 12 times during the flight. Medlink was contacted again. I did take a second pill, but it didn't really make a difference. My crew were very, very, very supportive and worried about me and gave me a lot of assistance and tried their best to make me feel better. And also, the pilots contacted the ground and explained my situation. And once we landed, an ambulance was waiting for me as at that point, I couldn't really walk anymore. I was cold, pale, and I was shaking. At my arrival in Doha, an ambulance was waiting to transport me to the nearest medical facility. I don't remember how I got there, to be honest. I was whisked away from the aircraft in such a state, surrounded by concerned faces and flashing lights. At the hospital, they administered me, I think, 3 IVs till I came back to my own powers. I was in hospital for a day. The second morning they released me. I was so much better. But for that day, I laid in bed looking at the ceiling. I was not even able to use my phone. I know the company, they contacted my mom and explained her the situation. I was really not able to do much. I was not really aware that it's been a day. I was just like waiting. But what was the reason behind all of this? I was exhausted. I was simply too tired after my long duties. Despite the challenges I faced, I am incredibly grateful for the support of my colleagues and the kindness of the strangers along the way. Working for two airlines from the Middle East, I would say that usually there's a strong bond between the crew, and I can proudly say that I will trust most of my crew in such a situation. That was my story for today. This is what happened to me a few years ago, and this is the kind of situation you might be in yourself as a cabin crew. So it's important to remember to keep a health balance, to try to cope with the hectic schedules and with the travel. Unfortunately, I went to Singapore for the first time and I was not able to visit anything. But luckily, I went there for the second time, for the third time, and so on. That's what's also amazing when you are a cabin crew, that you have these chances to go again and again and see an amazing destination. As I always say, it's a kind of toxic relationship. This job can give you a lot, this job also can take a lot from you. And in this episode, I exposed one of the dark sides of this job. If you think that the information from this channel help you, or if you simply enjoy being here and listening to my stories, please like this video, share it, and subscribe to my YouTube channel, as this will really impact me and will motivate me to create more content. Thank you and see you next time!